Hi, everybody. I'm going to be sharing for just a minute. Then I will actively join you. Okay, welcome. Thanks for coming. Okay, welcome. Thanks for coming. I think I just got rid of the echo. Hopefully, I just got rid of the echo. Kay says, hey, Joe and everybody. Hi, Kay. Dale says, hi, Kay. Mm-hmm. And Bonnie says, hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. Twice. My daughter Devora is here. Hi, Devora. And Andrew Hiller has joined her. Hi, Andrew. And I'll wait for a few more folks to join us. Not too many. Please share this as much as you can. I'd like a lot of people to see it. Okay, the title of things tonight is Quo Vadis Bernie. Translated as Whither Thou Goest, Bernie. Hi, honey. Okay, we don't know yet. We don't even know if he knows yet what he's going to do. He announced earlier today that he was taking a vote in the Senate, which was going to be the first phase of doing something concrete for people. And then he indicated that he and Jane would be flying home. And then they would be talking to supporters about where to go from here. Well, I guess I have some ideas on that too. And I'm a supporter. And I think that you've probably got some ideas too. And that most people here are also supporters, okay, of Bernie. So maybe we can all give him some advice tonight on Facebook, okay, and on YouTube when I post it up, okay, a little bit later over there. So please share this so many people can see it, so they can see what our ideas are. Okay, so also news has broken that Bernie has now suspended his ads to Facebook. People commenting on the announcement said that this generally means that somebody is suspending their campaign, okay, or ending their campaign. But I'm not at all sure of this. I think Bernie may be developing an entirely different strategy to stay around. So what might he do? Well, there's a lull in the primaries now. No other significant primary is scheduled until April 4th. So there's nearly 3 weeks until then. And frankly, it's quite likely the primaries for nearly the whole of April are going to be canceled, because the next 6 weeks are going to be weeks when we hit the peak of the outbreak here in the United States. We're way behind in testing. We don't know where we are yet with respect to the coronavirus. We do know that it's already having a devastating effect on the economy here, and that many things have to be done to save the economy. Okay, and yesterday Bernie released his program for facing the coronavirus and for curing the ills in the economy, at least for the short run. So that doesn't sound like a man who wants to go out. It sounds like a man who wants to continue to lead for a while, to develop some more programs, to have a say of his own, not under the direction of the Biden campaign, but under his own campaign. It also sounds like a man who wants to combine that with his position in the Senate and with his considerable social media power to continue to develop his movement and therefore his power base inside of the country. Bernie's power base is based in his movement, is dependent on his movement to keep his influence, to keep his power. He has to keep his movement going. And he has to keep it going even after the campaign, is over. Now, his movement, of which I think we are a part, wants him to keep on going, not to give up, to fight this to the convention, and maybe even beyond the convention. There are many of us who believe, on the evidence of the gaps between the actual votes and the exit polls, that Bernie was treated in at least 4 states, and that it was likely he may have been cheated, in many others. But the 4 states in question are California, Texas, in Massachusetts, and what was the 4th state? It escapes me now, but there is a 4th state. I'm sure if Susan Eldridge is here, she can instantly tell us which one is the 4th state. I suspect there's a gap between the actual votes and the exit polls, okay, in Minnesota as well. And if I were to take a guess, I would say that's true in New Hampshire as well. Also, and that the gap in the exit polls coincides with the presence of particular kinds, okay, of voting machines in precincts where the victory was actually given to Mayor Buttigieg. So, I think there are many of us who feel that this primary was not a fair primary. We don't believe that Joe Biden actually won. We do not believe that he actually will win, because it may be impossible to run another primary election except one by mail, unless they're all rescheduled to be completely mail run. It doesn't look like it's going to be practical to run the primaries. In fact, depending on the course of the virus here in the United States, the new cases may not begin to reduce to the level that doesn't represent a great threat to people coming together until after the Democratic convention. It may not even be possible to have the convention. So it may be necessary for the party to nominate someone without actually having had any primary contests beyond those that have been already run. Now, this is difficult. It's difficult because there's a need to begin a campaign against Donald Trump, okay, at this point. Why isn't it possible? Why isn't it possible for Biden to offer his platform, for Bernie to offer his platform, for both of them to continue to run, okay, until at least the convention, or at least until the Democratic Party makes, okay, its choice? And why can't they both run against Trump? I think that Bernie has the money to do it, or could certainly have the money to do it. And Joe Biden isn't crowdsourcing money anyway. He's getting his money from super PACs and billionaires. So I wonder why Joe Biden can't continue to do that and run his campaign in that way. And why Bernie can't continue to do that and run his campaign, okay, in that way. And then they both can run against Trump. And when the time comes for the Democratic Party to convene in some way, then it can make a choice as to which of the two of them the party wishes to nominate. I mean, the party has been taking decisions all along that are totally undemocratic. They're totally undemocratic. So the party's probably going to continue in that way anyway. So let Joe Biden start his campaign. I say start his campaign because Joe Biden hasn't really run a campaign yet. He's been hardly out there. He's been hardly visible. He got nominated because of a trick played by Jim Clyburn and Barack Obama. who persuaded a few people to come together and to create a kind of stampede effect, okay, along with the media, which went along, of course, because they can't stand Bernie. So, why should Bernie play that game? Why should he play that game and conclude that he is out? Why can't he just say, I'm still running for the nomination of the Democratic Party. I don't see that the party has met yet and has given the nomination to Joe Biden. So neither Joe nor I has the nomination of the Democratic Party right now. So let's keep on running. Let's keep the campaign going. And let's not run against each other. Let's run for our respective platforms. I mean, let's see Joe's platform. I'm going to run on my platform. And then when June and July but come around and the Democratic Party wants to make a choice, then it can make a choice right then and there. If it can't make a choice based on other primaries, it can pass some new rules to allow it to make a choice. But that would be, it seems to me, a very, very interesting race. Of course, it would drive the party crazy, drive them completely crazy. It would be a completely original thing to do. But what that would allow to happen is for the public to have a further voice. It would allow them to have a further voice. No, I'm afraid I was live streaming on Tuesday night and I did not see him on Tuesday night. So it would give the people a chance to continue to express their opinion in the opinion polls as time went on, as new issues surfaced, as new approaches to the crisis actually surfaced. And then we can see where the opinion polls go. And we can see what kind of platform Joe Biden produces. We already know the kind of platform that Bernie is going to produce because he's got it out there on his website. Kay says the DNC is pushing him to get whoever they pick for his VP, I think. Yeah, the DNC is pushing him to get the VP because they want the VP to shore up Joe Biden. They want people to feel good about the VP. They somehow think that they can sell Kamala Harris. But how can they stop Tulsi Gabbard from torching her again? Or maybe Bernie will decide to torture himself. It's so easy. It's so easy. She put all those people in jail. All those people, poor minorities, in jail when she was a prosecutor out in California. But there was one person that she declined to put in jail, and that is the current Secretary of the Treasury of the United States. That is Mr. Mnuchin. Yes, Steve, he clearly committed fraud in his bank. It was mortgage fraud. She decided to let him skate and not try to prosecute it. And he gave her a contribution of $2,800 to her campaign to show how much he agreed with her policies and her platforms. I mean, right? It was all about what she stood for, right? And he was basically saying, well, you're a person whose platform I can support. And then he proceeded to join the Trump administration. So thereby, was he saying that he supported Trump and he also supported Kamala Harris? Do we really want someone who could support the ideas of both of those people to be the vice president of the United States? Maybe Harris has a lot more in common with Trump than we think. Hey, could that be the case? Yeah, I know. It's the old guilt by association trick. It's beneath me. It's beneath me. Francesco Beccone has joined. Hello, Francesco. So, Kay says, I saw a post today that someone is trying to sue the DNC for voting problems everywhere. And maybe there'll be a few people who'll be trying to sue the DNC for voting problems everywhere. After all, they closed polling stations wholesale, and the polling stations that they closed seem to correspond to polling stations where Bernie Sanders was likely to do very well. And they saw to it also that there were short lines at other polling stations where Bernie Sanders was not projected to do well. This was particularly the case in Texas. But it may also have been the case in California. And by the way, there's lately been lots of to-do in California about the voting situation in Los Angeles County, which was a travesty. The long lines on voting day were just incredible. And disenfranchised quite a few people. And when they get in there and they want to be recognized as eligible to vote, they can't find these people who brought along their registration receipts. They can't find them in the system. They can't find them in the system. Turns out that what Los Angeles County did is they had this guy by the name of Dean Logan. And Dean Logan used to work essentially managing vote counting in King County in Seattle. And he botched up so badly there that he had to resign. And so the Democratic Party hired him in Los Angeles so he could bring his legendary vote counting talents down to Los Angeles County. So he promptly does a deal with a private company for a new voting system and new voting machines, spent $300 million on this particular deal, $300 million, and completely screws up the voting process in Los Angeles County. Now, in California, in California, Steve Gonzo is saying, I don't know if I saw this, but he's saying in California, there was a plus 26.4 swing to Joe Biden. In Texas, there was a plus 12.8% swing to Joe Biden. In Massachusetts, there was a 28.6% swing to Joe Biden. In South Carolina, there was a 14.9% swing to Joe Biden. And in Vermont, there was a 37.1% swing to Joe Biden. Cheating. I'm a little suspicious of that going on in Vermont. You would think that Bernie himself and his campaign would have more control of the vote there. But of course, I don't know that that's true. It may not be true because Bernie is not a power in the local situation any longer, since he's on the federal level. The people who control that might indeed have done a little rigging. But anyway, I haven't seen those kinds, of gaps. I do believe that in California, there was a 15-point gap between what the exit polls were showing and what the final result was. I'm sorry, not a 15-point gap. But basically, according to the exit poll, the election was Bernie's by 15 points. But according to the actual vote, it was down to 7. So he lost 8 points off his margin. Now, I don't know whether those went to Biden or did not go to Biden. They may have gone to Biden. I don't know. I only know that even if the Biden votes were completely legitimate, that Bernie should have gotten another 8% there, which at that point would have represented an awful lot more delegates in California than he got. That's just in California alone. So, anyway, what I started out to say, of course, is that the voting was rigged in a good many states. Certainly, there would have been a big win in California for Bernie. There would have been a substantial win in Texas for Bernie. There would have been a definite win in Massachusetts for Bernie. I don't think he would have won South Carolina anyway. And of course, he still was the dominant player in Vermont, even with the cheating. But if California had swung to him and Texas had swung to him and Massachusetts, that all three had swung to him and it was known that he was that much closer, and the California result had come out before the last round, of primaries, it's very possible that Bernie would be 150 votes closer to Joe Biden right now. And according to political polls earlier today, the delegate count is now, let me get to the delegate count here. The delegate count is 1,147 for Biden to 861 delegates for Bernie. So it is less than 300 delegates still. It is 284 delegates. 280, must be 286 delegates. So what they were showing, on MSNBC today was that Biden had something like a 320 delegate lead or a 330 delegate lead. That's not accurate. The latest delegate count as of 21 hours ago was 1147 to 861. In that earlier count, Joe Biden was at 1132, and Bernie was somewhere down in the low 800s at 803. So Bernie is closer than what the mainstream was saying he was this morning. So I'm not sure there's that large a margin of error, okay, for exit polls. It may be 4 points, but even if there's a 4-point margin of error, the swings were much larger than the 4 points. And by the way, all the swings in all the states where the exit polls were different from the actual counts, in all those states, it was always the case that Bernie lost and Biden gained. What are the probabilities of that? That happened in every single state whose actual votes and exit polls I came across. Now, I may be mistaken about that, what happened in every state, but as far as I know, from what I've seen so far, in every single state, it happened that way. So, I think there was that kind of fraud, that was going on. So I don't care. I really don't care what noise the DNC makes. I don't care what pressure the party brings to bear. This campaign that Bernie ran, that he ran, was the Not Me, Us campaign. That's what he called it. And I take him at his word. And we, not just we here, but all of us are the us. And we don't want him to go quite yet. We want him to hang in there and develop his programs further and continue to debate them in the context of a campaign against Donald Trump. Off the top of my head, I don't know, but I think you were right the first time. I think it is a 4-point margin of error, actually. I think it's plus or minus 4 points. But in all the cases we're talking about, the gap between the result and what actually occurred was 4 points or larger. So the gaps were outside of the margin of error in every case. And again, in every case, the errors were in Joe Biden's favor and against Bernie Sanders. In every case. What are the chances of that without rigging of the machines? Now, it's funny. There are commentators who support Bernie. There are commentators who support Bernie and who were very sorry about the way the primaries turned out. Okay, they're part of the alternative media, but there are two groups inside of the alternative media. Okay, there's one group that seems to implicitly take it for granted that the results are the results. And then they set about trying to explain the results. And the explanations they use tacitly assume that the results were legitimate results. For example, they'll try to explain the results by saying, well, Bernie didn't do as well among the young people this time as he did in 2016. He wasn't able to get them to come out to the same degree this time. Well, is that what happened? Or is what happened that the machines were rigged, the votes were suppressed, all kinds of rules were in place to stop the young people from going to the polls, and that these were largely new rules that were enacted since 2016? And hey, maybe that's the explanation. I mean, maybe if we accounted for that and put in the correction for that, it might even be true that he got more people to come out to the polls. They just never got to step inside of the polling place. Maybe that's what happened. I mean, maybe it was the cheating. And maybe also in Michigan. Okay, maybe in Michigan, it was the cheating that caused Bernie to fall behind his performance in 2016. Because we know there was cheating going on, okay, in Michigan at this point. I think that's another state where there was a gap between what was in the exit polls and what was in the final result. And I expect to see such a gap also when we get the full results in from the state of Washington, and we see what the exit polls were there. I expect to see a gap there too. So my point is, there are lots of commentators who are very good souls and whose intentions, okay, are good, and who have even said they'll never vote for Joe Biden. They're not going to vote for Joe Biden. They just won't accept this. But they won't go ahead and say, well, maybe the results are the way they are because of the combination of essentially machine rigging and voter suppression and the installation of new voting systems in a number of these states that nobody knew how to work. Now, remember the chaos in Iowa. There was a little bit of chaos, I recall, in New Hampshire too. And there was chaos in Los Angeles County because of totally new voting system that nobody knew how to run. And Pasta Jardula and Fiorella were saying all through the campaign that there were all kinds of gaps in the voting system, that it wasn't going to work, that people would not know how to run it. And they were right. They were entirely right. Now, I don't know if all this accounted for Bernie's loss. It might not have accounted for the whole lead that Joe Biden has today. But maybe if none of this monkey business was around, it would be tied today, in spite of the manipulations of Obama and Jim Clyburn. in spite of the manipulations of the mainstream media. Or maybe Bernie would even be a little ahead. Now, I haven't done a close analysis of this, and so I'm not going to claim, okay, this is the way it is. What I'm doing is I'm bringing up some questions, and I'm saying those questions over the legitimacy of this contest, suggest that it wasn't a fair contest. Suggests that it wasn't a fair contest. And therefore, it seems to me that Bernie is not bound, or should not consider himself to be bound, by the agreement he made with the DNC, that he would accept the choice of the party if it was not him, and he would support that choice and campaign for that choice. Now, he's said that again and again and again. Again and again and again. Okay. And so, what I say about this is that he's not obligated to keep that agreement. He certainly is not obligated to be straightforward about it. He can certainly run a parallel campaign to Biden's and say to the party, hey, I've suspended my campaign against Joe Biden, but not my campaign for the nomination of the Democratic Party. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to spend my time running against Donald Trump and running for my platform. And I'm going to communicate that to voters until the convention occurs, at least. And he should say, at least. And then public opinion polls can go on, and they can show what they're going to show. And let's see where the two of us stand vis-a-vis Donald Trump in July. Let's see where they are then. And then we can see you make your decision as to who's going to be the nominee of the Democratic Party. I think that might be a very good way to handle it. I, for one, if he handled it that way, would continue to support Bernie financially with all that I'm able to afford. Now, my wife and I had been doing that since the campaign started, and we would continue to do it. And I would hope that all his supporters would continue to do it, continue to supply the dollars that support the campaign, because that campaign is the spearhead of the movement right now. And we don't want it to end until the movement has hit its peak. And the movement has not hit its peak yet. It's too early. The movement is not done. And we don't want to end it by going in and backing Joe Biden for the presidency. And we're not going to end the movement in that way. How can Bernie continue the movement. If he ends his campaign and says he'll support the nominee of the Democratic Party, Joe Biden. And I see many of you expressing resentment from 2016, saying that Bernie threw us under the bus. Okay. Also, Linda Evangeline says, "Can't you see this? Did you watch a debate? Bernie is backing Biden." Sheesh. I watched the debate. I know Bernie wasn't as aggressive with Biden as we would have liked him to be. I, in particular, would have liked him to have gone at Biden with extreme anger for the amount of dishonesty that Biden displayed in the debate. He was totally corrupt, totally dishonest, totally lying Joe. And Bernie should have hit him with that all debate, all debate. His performance on Social Security was totally scandalous. His performance on the Iraq War, the same. Bernie didn't even hit him on the crime bill in the debate. Okay, I don't know whether Bernie has quit. He hasn't said he's quit. He said he's going up to Vermont to assess the campaign and where it goes now. I've suggested one place that I think the campaign should go. I think it should go into a parallel campaign to Joe Biden's for quite some time. And I want to see how these candidates, and Tulsi Gabbard, who's not out of the campaign yet, continue to perform in the public opinion polls. Now, right now, Joe Biden has a big advantage. He's way ahead in all the public opinion polls. So why should the party not like this? Why should it not like this? I mean, it's good for them. They can drub Bernie in the public opinion polls some more. Each time Bernie puts out a new plan to help us get out of the fix, okay, to help us get out of the coronavirus health and economic crisis, and also democracy crisis. What is a parallel campaign? I'll explain. Okay? The DNC wants a campaign against Donald Trump to start right now. That's why it wants Bernie out. That's what it says. It wants the campaign to start actually right now. Okay, that's fine. Let Biden start his campaign against Trump. Let Bernie start his campaign against Trump. And let's see who does better in the public opinion polls. Whose campaign against Trump is more effective? And then the party can make its decision in its good time. It's obligated to hold the rest of the primaries, at least by mail, isn't it? It's possible to hold the primaries by mail. Oh, why doesn't it do that? No, that's not the proof, because Bernie is Bernie. Bernie is not me. In other words, I don't mind people who show anger in a campaign. I don't mind people who get excited in a campaign. I don't mind people who express their utter contempt for dishonesty in a campaign. But that's not been Bernie's career. That's not been his career. He's developed a different style of campaigning. It's heavy on the issues. It's heavy on the framing. Okay, it's heavy on the platform, and it's very heavy on the stability and on not making personal attacks. It's hard for someone to change just like that. As far as the passion that Bernie exhibits, when Bernie talks about his platform, his ideas, he's plenty passionate. When he makes a rally speech, he's plenty passionate. Lack of passion is not a problem. Where the problem comes in is when he's in a debate with other parties. He contains his emotions then. He makes the smart play, and he wins the debates. There's no debate that Biden won from him this year that I can recall, including the last one. He wiped the floor with Biden during a debate, but there was a low bar for Biden. All he had to do was stay on his feet for the 2 hours. That's all he had to do. Passionate? Not at all, says Linda. Look, he just told us Biden could beat Trump. How could he want us to have Biden or Trump? He didn't want us to have Biden or Trump. But the point being, good night, Kay. Good night, Kay. Have a good night. I'm sorry we're depressing you here. I'm not trying to depress anybody. Actually, I think the strategy that I outlined is a very good strategy. I think that if Bernie follows that particular strategy, he can hang in there. He can change the public opinion polls. He can climb back. And when the next primaries are held, he can begin to win those primaries. And Biden can be put in an increasingly uncomfortable situation. And then we still may get the melting down of Joe Biden that we've all been looking for. So what I'm saying is that I wish that Bernie would have come a little more with the anger. Okay, I really do. And particularly put him on trial for lying to everybody in the context of the debate. But that would have been a very high risk maneuver. Very high risk. Because the mainstream would have fried him for it. The mean Bernie, uncivil Bernie, grouchy old man. I mean, you can just see it all. Now, Bernie had chosen not to act in that way. Sean Anthony kind of says Linda is a troll, okay, and an agitator. Well, and maybe so. I don't know that for a fact, but I'm always happy to debate people. She doesn't shake me, okay, at all. I'm still for Bernie. I'm still going to support him. And I urge you all to still support him. I certainly think that's appropriate in this particular situation. So, that's what I think that he should do. Okay. And by the way, I think Tulsi should do that too. We could use Tulsi out there. It would have been great if she had been in a debate. No, the media does not call out Biden during, okay, and afterward. But under the kind of withering attack that Bernie could have mounted, it would have been very hard for them to ignore the facts that Bernie brought. It would have been very, very hard for them to ignore that. So, Quo Vadis Bernie. I don't know where Bernie is going, but I've offered a proposal about where he ought to go. From this point on, at least until the primaries resume. Remember, they're still supposed to resume. Even those that are getting postponed are supposed to resume in June. There's a lot of time between now and June. There's the rest of March, there's all of April, and there's all of May. By the end of April, the virus may be peaking, but it won't be safe for a considerable time after that for people to begin to meet in large event kinds of contexts. Somebody asked me if I lived in a state that was having a primary right now, would I go and vote in person? No, I wouldn't go and vote in person. I am 81. According to this statistics so far, if I went into such a crowd, I would probably have a 16% chance, of dying, of its causing my death in not too long a time. I don't want to take a chance that that's big. So what would I do? Or would I not vote? No, I would vote. I would cast a ballot by mail. That's what I would do. I would see to it that I got the mail-in ballot in by the deadline. I wouldn't have to go to the polling place. So the answer is I would vote. I would vote in the primary. I just wouldn't vote in person. Sandy Shea asks, would it help if he named Nina Turner as VP now? Well, it certainly would help us to really, get us all very excited and all very interested in continuing to support him and continuing to fight, until the end. It would also get us very, very interested, if we're not already interested, in his making a third-party run. I think many people are interested in that. I'm interested in his making a third party run. I think voters should have a choice between Bernie, Biden, and Trump by election day. I have no doubt that Bernie would win a plurality in that situation. And I think he might win a majority of the electoral votes. as well, just as Bill Clinton did in 1992. Of course, he probably wouldn't be able to run on the Democratic Party ballot. He might have to run on the Progressive Party line or the Green Party line. Or the People's Party line, if there's going to be such a line, okay, in the coming contests. We have to see, okay, if that is going to happen. But Tulsi is still on the ballot. She still is on the ballot. Yes, she's on the primary ballot. Yep, Sean Anthony Connors points out that 2 Republican members of the House were just confirmed positive for COVID-19. Yes, they were. Yes, they were. They are positive for it. Who were the 2 members of the House, by the way? Was Gates one of them? Well, I won't say that Bernie threw us under the bus in 2016, because in 2016, he was running a different campaign, okay? It was still a movement that he was trying to build. But at that time, it was not the not me, us movement. This was the not me, us movement. This was the proper movement. If he abandons this movement, he will this time be throwing us under the bus. We have not supported him to see him give up this quickly. And that's what I think. And that's what I think, okay, he ought to do. Are there any final comments? I think I answered the question about whether I would vote, okay, in a primary today. Okay, Evelina said, why did so many older folk vote this last primary? There were many older folk who were there on voting day. Many of them were minorities. People over 60 were taking a substantial risk to their lives. They were. Okay, the statistics are not completely clear yet, but they are clear enough to show that there is a huge gap in risk between the people 60 and over and the people under 60. There's even a substantial gap between the people who are between 50 and 70 and the people who are under 50. And there's not much of a gap between the 50 to 70 group and the over 70 group. Not much of a gap. And the risk numbers don't begin to become substantial until you're over 50, in my view. Even more substantial when you're over 60, and still more substantial 70 and over. And boy, when you're 80 and over, you're really taking your life in your hands, going into crowds. When a coronavirus infection is nearing its peak, and when there are no antivirals available yet that are effective against the virus, and there's no natural immunity. Yeah, Tom Perez was very reckless. I hope his people sue his butt off. Hope they sue his butt off. He had no right to send older people into the voting booth on Tuesday. He had no right. He was endangering those people. He has no integrity at all. He needs to be kicked out and never seen again. Okay, any more comments? Questions? Lana says she cannot stand Tom Perez. Evelina says he makes me want to puke. Okay, and Linda Evangeline said, and Bernie didn't stop by those people. No, he didn't make a strong statement to stop it. He should have done that. That was on him. He should have made a strong statement. He should have come out straightforwardly and said, look, I know this sounds like I'm going forward for my own advantage in this campaign, but I assure you, I am not doing that. Given the spread of the virus up to this time, it is irresponsible to ask people to get in the voting booth tomorrow and vote. He should have given an address on Monday night and said that, because it was clear by Monday night that this was true. Well, Linda, not necessarily, because my advice might not have worked out. I don't have a career of 40 years in politics with many, many successes behind me, okay, as Bernie has. And Bernie has done an amazing job with all the opposition he has faced over the years, the ridicule that he's faced over the years. It's really amazing. I mean, he's really amazing. He has to have a tremendously thick skin and has to be completely dedicated. And he has to be a man of great moral strength and great strength of will also. And we know he's a man of great integrity, okay, and honesty too, because we can see it. Oh, come on, will ya? I mean, everybody's a millionaire these days. I won't say everybody. I'm not a millionaire. I'm far from a millionaire. But the basic point is, he's a guy who came to Washington, who earned a congressional salary, and then he earned a salary as a senator. All earned. Okay. In the process, he used his savings to buy a place in D.C. so he would have somewhere to stay. He and Jane also bought a house in Vermont where their family could live. And then Jane's family died, and left the place on the lake to Jane and Bernie. That's what happened. That's why they have 3 houses. And the wealth they have is from those 3 houses and from the royalties that Bernie got through writing a very good book. He got some royalties out of that. He worked damn hard for those royalties. But he's a millionaire now, largely because of real estate appreciation. Well, maybe they did, but if they bought the property on the lake, it was with the inheritance that was left to Jane by her family. I remember the stories at the time. So if they bought it on the lake and they bought it with the inheritance money, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? There's a false equivalence running around in our society. Okay, it relates to people. Okay, it relates to people who are worth a few $1,000,000 or $8 million or $10 million, and saying basically, these people are equivalent to the Koch brothers. They're not. They are not equivalent to Bill Gates or to Warren Buffett or to Bezos or the Koch brothers, okay, or the Walmart heirs. They're not equivalent, okay, in any way. The wealth of those billionaires is thousands of times the wealth of Bernie and Jane Sanders. Okay, and Linda, it just seems to me now that you're someone who's trying to raise doubts about Bernie Sanders and is trying to make all the negative points you can possibly make against him. Many of them are right-wing talking points. No, I'm not saying millionaires are. I am saying billionaires should not exist. There's also a huge difference between people who have hundreds of millions of dollars and people who have $2 or $3 million. There are many people here in the DC area through some real estate investments here and through long life are now worth, I don't know, $15 to $20 million. But they're basically people who earned it and made some investments and got rich from the way property values climbed here. No, he is not raising the doubts. You are raising the doubts. He's had a remarkable record, okay, of integrity over some, what is it now, 30 years in the Congress of the United States and 40 years when you include the local offices that he has held. There is no one with a similar longevity record who has greater integrity than Bernie Sanders. No one in the Congress of the United States who has a record of greater integrity than Bernie Sanders has. He's the paragon, okay, of integrity right now. Money is not money. There's a huge difference between being a billionaire and having $1 million. Money is not money. Okay. If you're a billionaire, you basically can do anything that you want to do. You have the money to do almost anything that you decide to conceive. Okay. But if you're a millionaire, you are limited. If you're Tom Steyer, then you can put $10 million into a super PAC to support some campaign. Okay, Sandy, I will take your advice this time, and I will now ignore Linda. I'm not getting angry at Linda, but I see that this is not really a discussion with her. It's not a debate in good faith. Joe, just block her. She's wasting your time. She's making you defend him. That is what trolls do. Okay, look, I don't block people. It takes a lot for me to block people. I don't block them, but I will take your advice. I'm going to ignore Linda now. And I'm also going to say, if anybody else has any comments that they would like to make, then I invite you to make them, because I have been on here now for nearly an hour and a half, and I'm about ready to go. Okay, any other comments? Steve says $1 million really isn't a lot nowadays, especially here in Los Angeles. I know. I mean, it isn't a lot here in the Washington, D.C. area either. Certainly not a lot in New York. Sandy says, stay safe, you all. Linda says, Linda's not on my friend list, but 34 mutual friends. Wow. Evelina says, still on board with Bernie. I'm still on board with Bernie, too. I'm still on board with Bernie. Okay, but I'll tell you this. If he decides to cave to the party, okay, and Biden now, that's not where I'm going. I'm going somewhere else. Because, frankly, we don't have the time to fool around with Joseph R. Biden. We don't. We need to get cracking on the Green New Deal. And we need to get cracking on it in 2021. Have to stop talking about it and do something about it starting in 2021. So we don't have the time to fool around with Joe Biden, who's not serious about that.
Do we have time to demand paper ballots?
We can't get paper ballots for this election. There's no way to move the system to paper ballots.
Mm.
Now, we can start working now on trying to change the system so everybody votes on paper ballots. Tulsi introduced a bill in Congress for paper ballots to be used all over the country. Okay, and also Tim Canova probably has a bill like that in his back pocket somewhere. I'm sure he does. Sharon Anthony Connor says, my parents must be millionaires then too because they own 2 houses. She's a retired bank manager and he's a retired DMV person. Sheesh. Newsflash. By real estate is expensive in New England. I know. It's expensive in most of the country. How many millionaires are there in California? I wondered. They're not really very rich. Now, when you get to the level of Nancy Pelosi, that's rich.
Yeah.
She's in the hundreds of millions category. And Dianne Feinstein, she's in the hundreds of millions of categories too. But, I mean, people who are just millionaires in California, they're a dime a dozen. I mean, there have to be millions of them. Let's just say this. I wouldn't be surprised if there were 1 million or 2 millionaires. That is 2 million millionaires in the state, of California. It would not take too much to have them there. Just some people who lived in San Francisco for a long time, and some people who lived somewhere in the Bay Area for a very long time, and some people who lived in the Los Angeles area for a very long time, and some people who lived in San Diego for a very long time. That's probably all it would take. And that doesn't even count those great houses down in Santa Barbara. Okay, Lana says, have you signed up for info on the People's Party? No, I get some things from the movement for a People's Party, okay, if that's what you mean, Lana. But if you want to send me a link to sign up for info from the People's Party, I'll be happy to have it. What about Brooklyn real estate? Yeah, Brooklyn real estate. Yeah, you own 2 houses in Brooklyn. In fact, maybe even 1 house in Brooklyn, depending on what the house is and the size of the house in the neighborhood. Even 1 house could make you a millionaire. Now, you don't need 2 houses in Brooklyn. There are parts of the Bronx where you don't need 2 houses. For example, in Riverdale, in Rhode Island, a 1940s 2-room beach shack with no improvement sells for $300K. Okay, and Lana says, yes, same thing. I don't know what same thing refers to exactly, but Steve says there are many poor millionaires here in LA, old people who paid off their house but can't afford to move. I deal with them every day. They're on Social Security. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, they live on Social Security so they can leave the house to their children, so they don't have to dig into the equity of the house, so they have something to leave to their children. Jill Stein offered Bernie the top ticket for the Green Party. I think that was in 2016. I don't think the Green Party has offered the top of the ticket this time around. I think the article you're referring to, Sandy, was an article from 2016. And yes, she offered Bernie the top spot, okay, at that point. In my view, well, I won't say he should have taken it because he's done a lot of good in the Senate since that time. And he's done great things in building this movement even further. The movement is stronger now than it was in 2016. Stronger now than it was then. So, any questions or comments? And Bonnie says, no. Bonnie says, no. Okay, I want to see if I can do something here. Let's see what I can do if I shift to this view. can't. What else if I go like this? I don't know how to work this StreamYard left as yet. I'm going to have to figure that out. Anyway, thank you all for coming. And I'm going to say goodnight. Oh, yeah. Yeah, Bonnie reminds me to remind you. Okay, it's at patreon.com/Joe_Firestone. If you like my streams, but please make a contribution there. Thank you. I'll see you next time. I'll be on tomorrow night, okay, at 9 o'clock, with another stimulating commentary on the world around you, the news. Good night, Evelina. Good night, Lana. Good night, Dolores, if you're still here. And good night, Russ and Steve Gonzo, Sandy Shaya. And thank you all for coming.